What's up guys? Thanks for joining me for today's quick video. If you're importing from these low-cost countries, China, Vietnam, India, Latin America, you know that when it comes down to quality, there are a lot of factors that are outside of your control. So today's video, I'm going to share with you one tool that is going to give you the biggest bang for the buck to stop the defects from running into your customer's door. Let's get started. For those of you first time watching my video, my name is Yuping Wang. I'm here to offer you the best sourcing tips and tricks to help you succeed. Today's topic is supplier quality control. When it comes down to supplier quality control, there are many things you can do. You can do a factory audit before you cut your purchase order to them. You can ask for multiple samples to make sure they're meeting your specification. You can do inline inspection during the production run. You can do a lot of things. But like I said before, there are a lot of factors outside of your control, even if you're doing all of that. So what is that one thing you must do? That one thing is final inspection before shipping. In order to do the final inspection before shipping, you need a good final inspection checklist. So today I'm going to show you how to develop a good final inspection checklist. Okay guys, to develop a final inspection checklist, where do you begin then? If you're Amazon FBA seller, the first place I recommend you to take notes from are the negative reviews on your competitor's product listing. Look at the negative reviews related to the product defect. Don't ever think that those defects have nothing to do with you. In fact, your product could be made by the same factory. So pay attention and take notes from there. And the second place to take notes is when you receive the supplier sample. A lot of times when we receive a product delivery, we just quickly discard the cartons. In the case of receiving the supplier sample, you should pay attention. Supplier sample, you should pay attention to how the product is packaged. Is the packaging adequate enough to protect the product? Out of the box, is the product scratched, damaged? Does it still work? Just keep in mind, the sample they gave it to you is the best out of their pile. Just imagine if the sample they gave it to you has a lot of problems, has a lot of defect areas. Imagine the mass product come out of the production line may have a lot more defect. So take notes when you receive samples. And the third place to take notes would be if you're making design change and making functional improvements against an existing product. This is the key area where you should develop inspection criteria to make sure the design and improvement are checked. So after you take notes, you can now sort out your notes and divide them into 3 sections. And these 3 sections would be summarizing your key inspection criteria: aesthetic, functional performance, and packaging. And in each section, you can develop sub-inspection criteria and give them a weight on how critical this sub-criteria is. And either you number it or you rate it, you rate each criteria, and then you can develop your final inspection checklist. Let's walk through each section now. Okay, the first section is aesthetic. You're basically judging the product from appearance standpoint. Say you're buying a plastic part, it has to be bright yellow. You have given your supplier, hopefully you have given your supplier your RAL number or Pantone color for that bright yellow. Then your inspection checklist will be inspecting against this RAL or Pantone color, that bright yellow color, if you think that is absolutely critical to be bright yellow. Your product maybe have a certain finish, like a certain textured feel or polished look, or having a certain design pattern. List all these out and mark which one are absolutely critical. So that's aesthetic. From functional performance standpoint, your final inspection checklist basically are checking against your material spec and your testing spec. The material specification can be defined on the product level. If it's a simple product, you can define what your product should be. And on the component level, you can further define if one or two component material spec. This is especially true when there's one component that is critical to your overall product performance. For example, if there's one little part must be made out of stainless steel, you can define the material used on this material, on this particular component must be stainless steel. And better yet, you can even further define if it's a 304 material, 316 material, to prevent the corrosion or rusting, all that. So material specification, you can really define your product material spec, size, weight, thickness, density, gauge, depending on your product. Of course, on the testing specification, your product has to function to your specification. You can, depending on your product, if it's an electronic product, maybe there's an indicator light that has to be turned on within 2 seconds. And you, based on your product performance, you can develop your functional test criteria 1, 2, 3. And I need to point out, if there's a certain mating part that need to be mated with your product, say if your product is an accessory part or there is an accessory part to your product, make sure that not only your part function very well, it also mate with the other part. A lot of times, maybe, you know, the hole is diameter is too small, too little, too small or too big, it doesn't work with the other part. So make sure the mating parts are together tested with your part. And the third section would be the packaging. Packaging inspection is important because that will be the first time your customer ever interact with your product. If you have your product packaged by an individual box, make sure your inspector inspect the individual cartons, size, width, thickness, and the color. If you have it, bright white, and make sure it's not a dull white. And if you have your supplier marked the carton with your part numbers or country of origin, make sure you inspect the carton, make sure the part number is correct. And of course, the barcode and labels, if you're sending the product to your retail shop or to Amazon warehouse, make sure the ASIN number, UPC number are correctly labeled on the carton. And finally, drop test. If your product is fragile, say it's made of clay, glass, or ceramic, or even electronic product, you need to have a drop test done to make sure the individual product, when it's shipped to the customer, that it's going to be safely protected. So you can use this approach by looking at a product appearance, by examining the product performance and the packaging. Use this approach to develop your final inspection checklist to have a grand list, a grand wish list, and then you can further screen out which one that are absolutely critical. Of course, the more inspection you do to your product, the better, but it costs more money. So let's talk about the cost element of the final inspection. Okay, the cost of the inspection is between $100 to $300 in China per man day. That means if one person going to inspect your product, it can be done in one day. It will cost you $100 to $300. If there are 2 people performing the job, it will double the money. And if it takes 2 days, it will double the money again. So in your purchase order, you should have defined that if the product failed to pass the inspection, the supplier need to fix the product or reproduce the product and pay for reinspection cost. So what is the AQL then? You don't need to understand the table, but you need to understand the concept of the AQL, the acceptable quality level. When you contract an inspection agency to inspect your product to perform a final inspection, they will use this table to determine a sample size and acceptable pass or fail level. When they give you a report, they will tell you what is the AQL level they used and what are the actual pass or fail percentage based on the report, you can review the data. If the failed percentage is borderline to the failed AQL level, you might want to take a closer look to the actual defects. So finally, I need to point out the final inspection checklist that you developed shall never be final. Depending on your supplier quality performance, you should always revisit your final inspection checklist, either delete or add more critical criteria if they have more defects related to certain parts. So that will help you to continue stay up to date with your supplier quality. When you change supplier, you should always add more inspection criteria to the final inspection checklist to make sure your product is always consistent with the quality performance. There you have it, guys. If you're importing from these low-cost countries, you need a final inspection checklist for each one of your product. Make sure you hire someone to perform the final inspection. That's the best investment you can make to control product quality. That is really the final gate before the defects running into your customer door. Okay guys, I hope you enjoyed the video. Feel free to message me in Sourcing Warriors Facebook group and let me know if you have any questions. I would love to hear from you. I will be happy to answer your questions. Until then, have a brilliant day. I'll see you soon.